Next move is knight to f3. Now it is black to play. Black plays bishop to e7. And now white plays bishop to g7, g5 rather, and just starts to develop pieces. At this point, black makes a very wise move, castles. Black's got 1, 2, 3 pieces in the game. White's got 1, 2, 3 pieces in the game. This bishop may be somewhat misapplied, but it depends on how the game turns out. The next move for white is e3, supporting the center, pawn chain, making it so that this bishop can enter into the game, or possibly even hyper-fianchetto, which I don't think is a great move. The next move for white is c takes d5, and now you got a choice. Should you capture this way? Should you capture this way? Capablanca captured this way, so that he would keep a strong stake in the center, and then all of his pieces are still working together. And he's still controlling the most important square. If the bishop captures here, knight captures, and he's still got protection on that most important square, so e4 is not playable for white. Queen to a4, and then black fianchettos the bishop by placing it on bishop to b7. Now I think that black's strategy is going to be to push this pawn forward if he takes, move this forward, and then enter into white's camp that way, which makes sense. When the center is locked down, the way that you make the center weaker is by attacking the flank of the board. So now if this pawn captures and then that pawn captures, then black has play on this side and he can move forward. As long as they're locked, the bishop can't enter into the game or anything. Now here I believe white is where white loses the game. I don't like queen to a4, but I think this bishop belongs on d3. Number 1, it's developed and pointed into the game. Number 2, it points towards the center. Number 3, it points towards the goal or the checkmate square. It's not check. You can't checkmate him now, but maybe in 10 moves you might be able to. And the strategy is this knight can advance here to come over here. The queen from this position can come here to here to here, or sometimes from here to there, provided the knight's not there. And that can be the strategy of the game. If you castle, put your rook on e1, push the pawn forward, battle over this, take e4, push the rook up and over, and then everything gets overloaded and pointed towards the critical 8-7 square. So by developing your pieces away from the goal of the opening, the strategic goal of the opening, it's going to cost you games. You have to stay with the theme of the opening, unless you can do something that actually works, and that happens all the time, but it's not guaranteed. So white develops bishop to a6 just simply to get rid of this bishop. Well, a minute ago this bishop was a bad bishop. However, if you place him here, this is called a good bishop. So this bishop here is stronger than that bishop there. So I think that's what loses the game for white. Now, next move, bishop takes. Now we're touching the queen again. Queen takes, and I think that the queen is out of position. So now we're going to have to get the queen back. Black, on the other hand, is not having to make those retroactive moves. So what black is doing is, by playing c5, black is starting that exchange that I talked about to open up the side of the board and to advance. Next move for white does bishop takes f6, and then should you take with the bishop? Now let's take with the knight, stick with the opening. The knight defends, the knight defends, the knight can enter in and defend, and now everything is protecting. In chess, everything should be touching each other as much as possible. There are no pieces that are aloof from anything. Even in white's camp, this is the only piece that's this is unprotected, this pawn is unprotected, this pawn is unprotected, and the queen is unprotected. But you can't take any of them. But just so you know, chess is a system, and your pieces work very well together. And when they're touching and working together, none of them are aloof or away, then your position is stronger usually. Takes c5. Take it with the pawn, and now this is called a pawn duo, and these two pawns can actually protect themselves. All you have to do is protect them, and they're already protected, so there's no weaknesses in the camp. White is just now castling, making his rooks communicate. Black has been castled for a while, and now black develops his queen to b6. Now it is black who is on the offensive upon white's retreat, and plays pawn to c4. And now the nitty of the gritty of the game is getting ready to be played, simply because these squares are opening up and these knights are getting ready to get active. So black plays rook at F, white plays rook at f to d1, rooks belonging on open files. Rook at f to d8. You give nothing away for free unless you have a reason, is what I always tell my students. The next move for white is knight to d4. Now this is called a hole, and you're always looking for these. The knight is very strong here. The knight, next move, bishop to b4. These two knights together can be kind of strong, so you have to attack places. I think that black is simply outpositioning white. If you'll notice, black is controlling all of this space, and the space is getting bigger as white has retreated. White's space that white is controlling is getting smaller, so I believe that black has an advantage. Also, black is coming on white's side of the board. White is not physically on black's side of the board, so those are all strengths. So the next move is b3 to try to break up this pawn structure, possibly open up some files and enter in that way, and to deal with these pawns. Sometimes the best thing to do is just to defend in a different way. Okay, I think that black would like to take, and then insert the knight here. So let's see what happens. The next move is b3. Rook at a to c8. Now both of the rooks are active for white and black. They're on the same file, so they both have chosen to battle on those files. So they're trying to give away nothing for free. It's white's responsibility to stop these pawns. So it's going to be challenging here. And the next move for white is b takes c4, and then d takes c4. So now we have a passed pawn here. He's an isolated passed pawn. There's no pawn on the d file or no pawn on the b file to defend it, so you have to defend it with your pieces. He is a strength. Because he's a passed pawn, there are no pawns down here to stop him. That means that these pieces have to stop him. The farther the pawn comes down the board, the stronger the pawn gets. When the pawn gets to the 6th rank, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the pawn is strong as a knight. When he gets to the 7th rank, he's as strong as a rook. When he gets to the 8th rank, he becomes a queen. So the farther the pawn comes down the board, the stronger the pawn gets. So your job as a chess player is to blockade him or stop him from moving it forward. The knight is one of the best pieces to blockade him, because while the knight blocks the pawn, the knight still attacks a lot of different squares, and that's why the bishop wants to get rid of him. So when you have a strength, you have to use your strength against your opponent to preoccupy them. If you'll notice, all of the focus in this game is on this part of the board, not on his king. His king is perfectly safe right here. For the moment, so is black's king. But we're going to use, Capablanca is going to use that pawn against white to try to win the game. The move for white is rook to c2. Bishop takes c4, and then rook to c3. So now, as I mentioned, the most important square in relationship to the passed pawn is the square in front of it. So if this rook is blockading that pawn, whose job is it to make the rook move? It's the knight move. But you got two choices. In chess, you have to find the candidate move, the move that the board requires you to make. Should you move here? Should you move here? I think this one is better, simply because if you move here, when he moves back, white is going to attack him. He's going to have to move back, and it won't be as strong. However, if you move to d5, when this rook moves backwards, you will be able to advance this, and it'll still be protected. And then if he attacks you, then you can still attack the rook, and now you're double attacking that. So you have to kind of see in advance and prepare for your next moves. So knight to d5 is the move. Next move is rook to c2, which we just did, and then pawn to c3, advancing the pawn. The farther the pawn comes down the board, the stronger that pawn gets. Next move, rook at d to c1. Next move, rook to c5, defending. So black should try to chase this rook away, and he does so by going knight to b3. And then rook to c6. Well, guess what? I think white would appreciate a draw here. So he goes back to d4. If we do it 3 times, it's a perpetual draw. So he says, no, I don't want to draw. So he goes to c7. Knight to b5 to attack the rook. And now black gets the square that he wanted to simply because he over-attacked. And now he has to, he goes rook to c5. And now the knight takes here. Knight takes c3. Rook takes c3. Rook takes c3. Rook takes c3. And now comes a very, very, very beautiful move. Let's see if you can determine what the best move is. Both of them are dreaming about checkmating each other. However, there is a beautiful move here that Capablanca makes that wins the game for him. And in fact, that move is a queen sacrifice. So, he moves queen to b2. So now, if queen captures, checkmate.